Hi, this is Rabbi Dov Fisher commenting on Candace Owens' incredibly anti-Semitic act during the inauguration of our president, a president who will make America great again, Donald Trump, and her ongoing shift from a friend of Israel and of Jewish people to a remarkable anti-Semite. Now, I expect a certain number of Candace Owens followers will eventually comment on this. So there may be a long string of that. And there may be a lot of people that don't even find it. Maybe it'll only get 30 views. But it's a matter of conscience because for the sake of Zion, I cannot hold my peace. For the sake of Jerusalem, I've got to make this statement. I'm going to be looking down because I'll be referring to an article I published in the American Spectator, where I am a senior editor. And I published it in August, obviously before the inauguration. Candace, we hardly knew ye. When I was a kid, a group of my friends and I followed a nonsensical professional wrestler. You know, professional wrestling is kind of fixed. But I was a kid and I didn't know that. In the schema of the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, there were faces, the good guys, and heels, the bad guys. We obviously knew it was phony. Amid the foolishness, a new star good guy was introduced, Cowboy Billy Watts. He was the goodest of the good guys, never lost. Fan favorite, quickly rose to the top of the constellation of stars. I became his #1 biggest fan in the whole universe. Right up there in the 1960s Dove world alongside Mickey Mantle and Superman. Eventually, the unthinkable happened. Remember, all this was nonsense and scripted and staged as an ongoing storyline the way professional wrestling goes. Cowboy Billy Watts' growing ego got the better of him, and he jealously turned on Bruno Sammartino, the quintessential good guy and Worldwide Wrestling Federation champion. Tragically, to the degree it's a tragedy, Cowboy Billy Watts went from the most popular wrestler, the most popular face, to the most hated heel. Initially, I could not accept it. He was my hero. He was such a good guy. Cowboy Billy Watts had become a bad guy? By the way, it turned out decades later, I looked him up. It turned out he really is a bad guy. Nasty racist. Which brings me to Candace Owens. So many of us conservative American patriots were so excited when we saw her earliest public appearances, manifestations of greatness, her articulation, her razor-sharp smarts, her refusal to be intimidated by the mainstream. The left despises nothing more than a conservative, black woman. Just ask Clarence Thomas, Justice Thomas, who's only 2 of those 3. In the world of the left, blacks are forbidden to be conservative. Jason Riley of the Wall Street Journal, Thomas Sowell, Tim Scott, Dr. Ben Carson, Alan West, Shelby Steele, Larry Elder. Candace was the defiant challenge to that blatant Biden bigotry that bellows, if you are dark-skinned but conservative, then you ain't black. You remember Biden, right? I think I could find him in an old book. You know, he's the guy that, who is he? We'll come back to him. They couldn't break her, our magnificent Candace. The harder they hit, the stronger she countered. It seemed she was destined for greatness, perhaps one day to become a regular columnist in a major daily news publication or a host on her own TV show, not just a thing like YouTube. Maybe even the US Senate. They couldn't break her. Only Candace Owens herself could break her. And now, before our very eyes, we are witnessing the wreck of the Candace Owens. It is as sad as the turn of Cowboy Billy Watts. Soon enough, though, one feels hoodwinked and bamboozled, forever having thought otherwise of the scoundrel. Good guys don't just become bad guys. As I said, Billy Watts, it turns out 30 years later, actually is a nasty racist. When an intense and near invulnerable person doubles down to demonstrate that no one is his or her boss, no one will intimidate her by suggesting politely she's made a mistake, said something factually wrong, then we sometimes witness an unbreakable hero, but often instead behold the self-destruction of hubris. It's a tragic flaw worthy of a Shakespearean tragedy or of the Worldwide Wrestling Federation. Imagine what Candace Owens could have been. We will never know, and by now, who remembers Cowboy Billy Watts either? A rigid stance defending truth is noble, standing by honorable principles no matter the personal cost. That's noble. We admire heroic personalities who even go to prison for their righteous beliefs. Nelson Mandela, Anatoly Sharansky, Alexei Navalny, the guy who just died in Russia, Mohandas Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., Andrei Sakharov, Václav Havel, Rosa Parks, Zev Jabotinsky, Yitzhak Shamir. Candace Owens tragically sees herself that way prematurely. It is tragic when a person of such potential greatness simply basks in ignorance, rejecting peripheral information and knowledge to augment her smarts, consumed with the narcissistic and even paranoid sense that people of power are trying to silence her. She defiantly assures her following that she is a proud Black woman who will not be silenced. Poor thing. Like so many others, while advancing up the ladder, she was blessed to encounter one or two sponsors or mentors to pave early roads for her. Many of us can remember those who believed us and gave us a big break in our own lives. As such, Candace Owens found Dennis Prager, the well-known radio celebrity who brought her into his Prager University. Then she got another break when Ben Shapiro brought her into the Daily Wire. They opened doors and mentored her, and she proved more than worthy. She really is, as I said, brilliant, sharp as a whip, exceptional. She brought them a new niche of viewers and listeners attracted by her unique brand. Then along came Kanye West, who asks to be called Ye. Kanye West, the gifted conservative-leaning musical talent, fashion entrepreneur, and maniacal anti-Semite. When Kanye West tweeted crazed anti-Semitic outbursts about going to DEF, that's DEF, Com3, Jews obviously were disgusted. But Candace raced to defend him, and I get it. This kind of makes sense. There are so few prominent Black entertainment, new generation conservatives, and Kanye West may have been her Cowboy Billy Watts. With that, she began her descent into anti-Jewish hell. She proffered all sorts of defenses for Kanye West. Again, he prefers to be called Ye. While Prager and Shapiro, prominently Jewish, presumably sought to persuade her that Kanye West is not where she wants to build her brand. Alas, as a narcissistic, proud Black woman who will not be intimidated, she felt excited by the opportunity to defy her sponsors, finally to break her imagined chains of bondage, chains of guidance, opportunity, and mentorship. Don't you tell me what I can't defend, whom I cannot embrace. Okay, that happens all the time. Simon and Garfunkel split. The Beatles broke up. But then it got sinister and pernicious with Candace. Her two foundational conservative mentors just so happened to be Jews. They could have been Laurel and Hardy. They could have been Abbott and Costello. They could have been any two. They could have been Biden and Kamala. but they happened to be Jews, proud and self-respecting Jews. Prager and Shapiro could be the name of a law firm. So instead of just targeting her two mentors personally with vitriol for seeking to dissuade her from defending Kanye West and his Jew hatred, she doubled down on her delusional heroic pro-Kanye and determined that the nastier way to hurt Prager and Shapiro personally would be by attacking their Jewish aspect, attacking Israel. See the connection? A Jew annoys you, so you attack Israel. Got that? It is as reasonable as if her two early life mentors happened to be of Armenian descent and heritage. So now she would hit them by advocating politically for Turkey and Azerbaijan while denying the Mezhegern, the Armenian genocide of 1915 to 1960 never happened. Suddenly she starts telling her embarrassingly uninformed audience, I'm sorry for those that take umbrage at that, but if you're uninformed, you're uninformed. Absurdly, that she went to Israel and saw apartheid with her own eyes, because there is an Arab quarter in Jerusalem's old city and a separate Jewish quarter there. Apartheid. It never occurred to her. Why? Because she is so razor smart, she truly is, that facts need not align with her feelings. Facts don't care about your feelings. The four quarters of the old city, which also has a Christian quarter and an Armenian quarter, were not designated by Israel as a Jewish quarter or Arab quarter, but by a British cartographer, sorry for my Brooklyn accent, mapping out the old city in the 1840s, a century before Israel was established. Apartheid, it's like designating a community in San Francisco as Chinatown, or a community in Lower Manhattan is Little Italy, and another in Upper Manhattan is Spanish Harlem. She sarcastically endorsed Nikki Haley for president of Israel because Haley is pro-Israel and anti-Hamas. Went after, quote, secret Jewish gangs, Candace did, unquote. In Hollywood, devoted a crazy episode of her show to attacking Washington, D.C. Jews. Frankly, as an Orthodox rabbi, I despise a great many of the Washington, D.C. Jews. If we're talking about Chuck Schumer, who grills cheeseburgers and doesn't even know how to do them without creating E. coli, self-hating Jew. You're talking about Bernie Sanders, the self-hating Jew who hangs around with Jew haters. Oh, there are plenty of Washington, D.C. Jews I don't like. There are some I like very much. There are some I don't like. I could get that. She even liked a social media post that said a rabbi was, quote, drunk on Christian blood, unquote. The crazy thing is, for what it's worth, Jews are forbidden to ingest any blood. We have this amazing kind of halakha, Jewish law, in the Torah. You could look it up in Leviticus and in Deuteronomy. We're not allowed to ingest any blood. Kosher meat first has to be drained of the blood with incisions on the kana and the veshet, on the, I guess you would call it the throat, the air pipe and the windpipe. And then the meat has to undergo an crazy kind of process by which we first soak the meat, get it all nice and wet, put it on a board with holes so blood can dry out. We then layer the meat with salt, with what's called koshering salt, not the real thin salt you use for spices and seasoning, and not the real big salt things that you put on the streets of New York when there's a blizzard, but koshering salt, you've seen it. And you layer the meat with the salt, and the salt creates a chemical reaction while adhering to the water on the meat, and blood that's still in the meat drains out. Who does that? Who does that? Jews do that, because we're not allowed to have any blood, much less Christian blood. The anti-Semitism that reminds us of from the Middle Ages, when Jews actually were killed for that lie. And yes, she was. That was that was our Billy Watts, cowboy Billy Watts, Candace. Now at war with Bruno Sammartino, so to speak. Then, after discussing with you about the blood, she provided her YouTube platform to give a great platform to Norman Finkelstein, a Jew who, well, just look up Douglas Murray, just Google Douglas Murray and Norman Finkelstein. Murray says it's so much better than I ever could about the lowlife that Norman Finkelstein is. Man whose hatred for everything Judaic and halachically Judaic and the Jewish state is just horrible. Makes Kanye West look like he's down to DEFCON 6. By contrast, Piers Morgan invited Douglas Murray to debate this guy Finkelstein, and he ripped him to shreds. But Candace gave Finkelstein basically an open platform for ignorant people to listen and think they were getting educated for the first time as to a truth that is not a truth. And so he went on casting doubt. She's gone on as well, casting doubt on what Joseph Mengele did to the Jews during the Holocaust, when he selected people for experiments, medical experiments. It's so well known. It's not a Jewish thing. Non-Jews have talked about it. Non-Jews have written about it. They experienced it also. He went for twins and triplets, and he did barbaric experiments on them as though they were vermin to see what he could learn from common and differing traits of triplets and twins. Well, she says it sounds like bizarre propaganda. Can't believe it happened. She states the six-pointed Star of David originates from a pagan Canaanite god that was fed with child sacrifices, and asserting that it was the Allies' treatment of Germans during World War II. That should be the humanitarian focus, not the claims of the Zionists. Oy, that's a Jewish sound. Oy. Jews always are the canary in the coal mine. First, the conspiracy theorists go after the Jews. Next, they start accusing America of perpetrating genocide too, against Germany, as if the Jews initially had. So the allegation too is that Americans do it. Even Candace, the patriot who is supposedly a MAGA person. For Candace, it's exciting to be brave, fearless, a strong Black woman who will not be intimidated by anyone telling her what she may or may not say. If she wants to say a lie, that's her call, and you can't stop her. She can say anything she wants. That's how America works. Ask Alex Jones about Sandy Hook. In America, and she doesn't necessarily have any relationship with him or anything to do with him, but he's a model of how some people will say things that they have no business of saying, and every so often they get called on it. Justice President Trump now is just called Stephanopoulos and ABC to the tune of $15 million, and CBS is next and NBC after. So her present campaign against her presumed eternal enemies, Ben Shapiro and Dennis Prager, hated for urging her to rethink her endorsement of Kanye West's insanity, drives her to reveal all the evils of all the Jews. Ever heard or seen that playbook before? In Judaism, we speak of three dimensions that comprise a person's intelligence: smartness, chachma, knowledge, da'at, and understanding, insights, bina. Candace clearly is blessed with smarts. She's really smart, really is. Alas, a smart person who lacks knowledge can sound smart, but only to those more ignorant than she, such as her social media following of ignorant people, conspiracy theorists, and others of such ilk. A random scan through a few hundred comments on her YouTube post, the time she hosted Finkelstein, reveals something about her audience. The pattern of comments that I saw can be summarized by this paraphrasing. So it's not literally a quote. Instead of quoting 100 people, I'm combining them into 3 or 4 to the best of my ability. 1, Candace, you are so smart and so beautiful to look at. Thank you for having the courage to bring this wise professor to teach us about Israel apartheid. Another one, Candace, I never knew that about Israel's genocide. Thanks, and I love looking at your face. Another one, Candace, you are so brave to stand up to the Zionists. You are fearless and gorgeous. And 4, Candace, this Professor Finkelstein is the first time I ever learned anything at all about Israel. No wonder the whole world hates the Jews. He is so brave to tell it as it is, and I couldn't stop looking at you. That's our audience. Not NASA scientists, brain surgeons, hardworking Americans on assembly lines, or homemakers rearing families. She just had a child, and I wish her the best with the child. I hope her child grows to be a model replica of everything she used to believe in. I wish her only the best for that child. Rather, she has now become the blind leading the blind. Candace is so smart, but as she unwittingly demonstrated when commenting on the 19th century residential quarters of Old City Jerusalem, also is pathetically ignorant as to many complex matters. Without knowledge, there can be no useful understanding or insight, despite smartness, because she has no foundation. It would be like having missed the news of Saturday, July 13 from Butler, Pennsylvania, then seeing Donald Trump at the Republican National Convention a few days later with his ear heavily bandaged, and applying one's smartness and understanding, but without knowledge and information, to conclude Trump must have gotten into one heck of a street fight. Ignorance is not bliss, especially in a self-styled pundit. Owens's tragedy is that determined to prove that she is a proud Black woman and that no one will tell her what she may say, such as condemning Kanye West for his overt anti-Semitism. She ends up painting herself into corners by spouting opinions and exposing conspiracies built on nonsense. Then when her mendacity or fantasy is debunked, she is too proud to acknowledge that she's been called out, to acknowledge her ignorance. So instead doubles down, retreating to her own DEFCON 3. I was among those who initially thought Candace Owens was a special new voice in America. 50 years earlier, I had been eagerly enthusiastic about Cowboy Billy Watts. I did not want to accept that my good guy had gone bad, but he had. And he even turned out years later, in real life, to be a nasty racist worse than that. I conceded. I actually told friends I had Billy Watts wrong. I should have been rooting for Bruno Sammartino, Bobo Brazil, a lot of people. I think even Gorilla Monsoon. Now I confront the reality that Candace Owens, too, has moved from potential greatness to scum. Candace, we hardly knew ye, but now we knew ye, we know ye, and we know your friend ye. This is Rabbi Dov Fisher. If you like what you heard, please forward the link. Please subscribe to my channel. If you don't like what you heard, I'm sorry, truth hurts.